Hello and welcome, my name is Trismegistus and today we're going to be rocketing through the latest Factorio Friday Facts. Friday Facts 441, Space Logistics Improvements, posted by Guinness and Clonan. Hello, nice to see you all again so soon. Okay, before we get into this, there's not going to be proper speculation because I am in the closed beta test for version 2.1. I had to kind of decide whether I was going to participate when I kind of got the invite, or I was going to leave it and let myself do speculation. The last video 440, Friday Facts 440, didn't quite do the numbers compared to the lore speculation videos, so I kind of figured I'd prefer to spoil it and know what I was doing, especially given I completely botched the launch of version 2 and Space Age and didn't really get anywhere in the playthrough that I was trying. But what I am allowed to do is I'm allowed to talk about the things that are mentioned in these Friday Facts as they come out. So some of them, I'll be honest, this one I haven't actually got that far. It's not been that long since I've started, so I haven't really got to a lot of the space stuff. So I only have experience of some of these things because I loaded an old save and had a bit of a mess about. So some of them will be new to me, but there won't be speculation. I will try and add a bit of commentary and a bit of colour and stuff like that, as per usual though. So if you don't really want to watch these Friday Facts ones, and obviously they are sort of spoilers, I guess, for the actual, the 2.1 version. Cool. So I think that's all the preemptive rubbish. We'll get into it now. Mixed rockets by Guinness. Imagine you are setting up your first platform. You start building tiles, a full rocket load is sent. When you need belts, assembling machines or furnaces, again, a full stack is sent. A small platform could request 10 to 20 automated rockets and leave plenty of unused items in the inventory. The advantage is that you don't have to wait for more when you decide to rebuild it or add machines. This is how we envisage space platform building, as making incremental progress. But not all players like to do it this way. Some like to plan more in advance. These players view sending full rockets of items as a waste of rockets, especially in the early game. We noticed the discussions on our forums, on Reddit and on the community Discord. The point I would make there, it doesn't bother me this. I know it seems to annoy quite a lot of people, and I get it, but I always tend to build reasonably big for the first, second rocket, so I don't tend to be starved of rockets. Obviously that causes me some problems in that early game because I'm building a lot bigger than I suppose I need to. But the thing I would note on that it is annoying for is when you've got a blueprinted platform. When you've already designed one and you know what it is, you've got your space science platform or more likely platforms going around between the planets. Putting that blueprint down and it's sending up 20, no, it's not 20, is it 10 of the grabber arms, and you only need 2 sort of thing. That is annoying, particularly since you've got to kind of send them back again. Yeah, so I'd say for me, the only friction point really with this is the blueprint side of it, when you've already got a platform that you know what you want to do with. We didn't attempt it during 2.0 development because mixing multiple item types in one rocket seemed too complicated. It had lots of edge cases which we didn't have a good answer for. However, it was also something I missed in my own playthrough, so much so that I started working on a proof of concept mod abusing our Lua API. So Lua API, is an application programming interface. It's basically how you can, it depends, you can do it on several levels, but it's basically how programs communicate with each other. So when you have an app, on your mobile phone, and it's say getting data from the weather, like from the Met Office in the UK or something like that, then it will be reaching back into the actual, that actual database, as it were, and on the Met Office's computers, although it's probably stored in the cloud somewhere, but it's getting the data for that from via an API. So API is like the calls and requests for information between programs, but you can actually, you can do them at a lower level. Functions within a program can use APIs, for example. And Lua is just a particular type. It's it's fairly common actually. Lua, it's used. It's basically because it's written in C, and that's what that is essentially. It was functional, but wasn't polished enough to make it available. And no, none of my co-workers ever saw it. Then the feature popped up independently on our internal 2.1 wishlist, and I volunteered to implement it. Handling the edge cases, thinking about our options and discussing what we wanted to achieve took quite some time and wasn't without compromises. In the end, I think we reached a good place. So let me present our results. Left-hand image, which is this, all of this here is a single image, and that's a single image on the right there. But the left one has a caption, a typical full build platform construction request. And the right-hand one says, one of the mixed rocket payloads to build the platform. So what are we seeing here? So typical full build platform construction request. So I'm guessing this has been done with a blueprint sort of thing. So it's been slapped down, and that's the design that they've got. And then essentially this is like the list of items that, you know, when you're building a platform and it has at the top that it's got this is what it lists as its requests for build items when it's not got it in the platform's inventory. So obviously here, you know, we've got, for example, some long-handed inserters, and there's modules in some of these, and we've got 4 electric furnaces, 2 assemblers. So it is a complex mixed bag of stuff. And what it would normally do, a very good example is like the storage tanks. There's 2 storage tanks, which presumably, I think that's those at the back there, and they're being used for, you know, rocket fuel, the two types of liquids for the rocket fuel. So it would send up an entire rocket of storage tanks, which is obviously, I guess, inefficient. As I say, I wouldn't normally be, I'm not usually that fussed about that sort of thing. But when it is a blueprint, you know, where you know what it works, you know that it works, you don't need to mess about with it, you know your design is functional, that, you know, it's going to make ammo and what have you, and blah, 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 blah. You kind of don't want to mess about with it. You don't need 10 storage tanks or whatever it sends up. I think, is it 50 or what have you, 25? You know that works, you know, it's fine sort of thing. So I do get that point, even though, say, for me it's not that big of an issue. And then on the right hand side, I don't think this is matched. It is matched to it, isn't it? So this is it sending up. Yes, so the ones that are marked in yellow here, oh no, they're not. I thought maybe those yellow ones were the ones it had identified to put in this rocket, and they sort of are. We've got the 2 assembly machines, we've got 2 of the furnaces, all 4 of the undergrounds. So maybe it is. Maybe it's a site. Maybe there's a second rocket, isn't there? But there's a second rocket there. So maybe what it's showing is that the second rocket has 10 long-handeds. What else is missing from that list? 2 of the furnaces. And that's it. That sounds like a bit of a short list, basically. But it seems like this is it fulfilling this request partially. And what it's doing, clearly, is this is presumably what's going on. I haven't actually read this. I've sort of had to pick it up a bit late. But I'm presuming that what's going on here is it's doing essentially a sorting algorithm and saying, which items can I stick together that will make the 1-ton rocket capacity? The important part of supporting mixed payloads was to make it fully automatic. That is, you request something on your space platform, and if you have the automatic requests turned on in your rocket silo, the logic should pick the right batch of items and have robots deliver them to the silo. At the same time, we had to keep performance in mind and not try to find the most optimal solution, just something good enough. We process requests sequentially and start with the lowest request count. These represent one-off construction requests or important items, so we want to deliver them before bulk goods which platforms normally transport, like calcite from Volcanus or planetary science packs. Okay, so what that's saying is it would do it. It sounds like it's not some setting that you just enable once, as it were. It's always going to do this. That's interesting. So I presume if you had some incident with an asteroid and it trashed, say, a bit of platform and a gun turret on a corner or something, then they would go into its, and you didn't have them in your inventory for it to replace. They would go into that build order queue, and so when it arrived at Volcanus, say, and it was trying to pick up calcite, first it would get the replacement turret and the bit of platform piece, assuming that they're available on Volcanus. Maybe they're not, but it sends them up, but presumably it would then fulfill the rest of the calcite requests in order to fill up the inventory. So it would do a mixture of your normal logistics requests and these actual proper, build the platform requests. Interesting. Sending the rocket half empty would be wasteful, but we didn't know how to solve it nicely when making 2.0. In 2.1, we decided that we should select the most requested items and over-deliver them because you likely want more. Delaying the rocket until players request more items wouldn't be intuitive and wouldn't really work with the all requests satisfied condition. So here we go, here's a little video. The caption on it says step-by-step demonstration of the logic. I've moved it out on a separate tab, so we'll take a look at it in more detail and we'll just play it through. Okay. I see what it's doing. I presume they've slowed this down. Ah, there you go, you see. Okay, so what it's doing then, let's go through step by step. So the platform arrives or is in orbit and makes a load of requests. So these are the unfulfilled requests, and they're unsorted, which is interesting. So it then actually presumably sorts them, extract and sort unfulfilled requests. Okay, so it sorts them into order of the number requested. So we go from that's just whatever, random order that it put them in, and then that it sorts them through and says 1 item, 3 items, 7 items, 8 items, 13 items, 16 items. So it puts them in this must be the biggest priority, and this must be the lowest priority. Okay. It then says prepare mixed payload from requests. So it's now done that and it's moving on to the next step. Okay, where it goes through and it picks the lowest number and sticks it in as a this virtual rocket inventory is what is going to become the request for that rocket, but it's doing the processing first. I presume this is a separate visualization that they've just done for this. It then goes to the next item because there's plenty of room in the rocket and says, can we fit them in? Yes, we can fit them in. Goes to the next one, can we fit them in? 8, can we fit them in? 13, can we fit them in? The 16 inserters. Yep, we can fit those in. And here's that exact example, okay, because it's put them all in and there's still rocket capacity left. So there is 195 kilograms of rocket capacity left. So it says, instead of just sitting there waiting, because it's not got full inventory, it says, right, or the logic they've gone for is, right, well, some of these must be, the most popular requested items are probably ones that are going to get used again or added on somewhere else. So it fills the rocket up and says, right, well, the most requested item is inserters. How many of those can we fit in to get close to filling the rocket? Well, we can fit in, we go from 16 to 25, we can put an extra 9 in, okay? But even that has not fulfilled the rocket request. So it then must step down and says, well, could we fit a belt in? Yep, we can fit one more belt in. So it goes up to 995 kilograms. It then goes next down and does solar panels and says, can we fit a solar panel in? No. So then it goes to pipes and we stick in pipes. So we go from 7 pipes to 8 pipes, and that's 1 ton. Now, as I say, maybe it'll cover this. If you're not requesting if you weren't requesting any inserters and any pipes, and you didn't, and maybe no belts, and you're only requesting, chemical plants, electric furnaces and solar panels, so big heavy items, what would it do then? Because sticking a solar panel, as we saw with the solar panels in this example, they may not fit. You can't fulfill a 5 kilogram request with just sticking in a solar panel. So it'll be interesting to see what it actually does in that scenario. Okay. Even when over-delivering some items, the algorithm can still fail to find a complete batch due to our sorting constraints. An algorithm is, that process, that's an algorithm. So when you go through and say, do this next, do this, that's an algorithm basically. So this is a filling and sorting, filling and packing algorithm. It usually happens when you don't have enough supply in your logistics network. So that's another example where, say it got to this point here, where we've got 5 kilograms left. we have identified that a pipe would fill it up, but we don't have any pipes in our logistics network. We've run out, say, which bit unlikely with pipes, but maybe it's just not, the chest is not properly connected or what have you. So it can't put in a pipe because it's not got a pipe, but also there's nothing else it can put in on that list that would fulfill that gap. So effectively it would sit there waiting. The logic hopes that missing items will be produced eventually and wants to wait. Some co-workers were confused about it during our playtest, so I opted to fall back to single item rockets to keep things flowing. So I think that what that's saying is if this fails, and presumably it has some check in place to say, is it going to fail for the next 5 seconds sort of thing? In other words, are we one pipe short because that pipe is being made at this exact tick? In that case, wait. I don't know, maybe that it doesn't do that, but it would seem logical, particularly these small items to fill up, that it all wait. But as I say, the edge case the example where you're not requesting anything small, you're only requesting big things, it will fail and just sit there failing, and it will never be able to fulfill that gap, never be able to fill that gap in, because the things you want are bigger than the weight capacity that you've got available. And in that case, it goes, okay, this has failed, and instead sets the standard, whatever it is, 10 item requests, and sends them up individually. Presumably it does for each, it depends how many, how many rockets you've got, but presumably if you've got one rocket, it would send that one up with, say, the whatever it is, 50 furnaces or what have you, and then it would do the check again, and basically in that time maybe you'd got the pipes so it can do the algorithm properly. I also made various other tweaks, so the fallback should be very rare, and we can change it more based on players' feedback. Platform construction deadlocks. Another difficult case was dealing with space platform deadlocks. A few weeks after 2.0's release, we got a bug report on our forum. The player pasted a large platform blueprint, and their hub didn't have enough inventory space to fit all the requests. Now, I have done this one, and this one is annoying. The workaround essentially is to build it either in pieces, so have multiple parts in your blueprint, or have a blueprint that is the cargo bays first, and so it sends the cargo bays up, builds them, and then once that's done, then you can put the second one on, which is not very Factorio. It should just cope with you. It's the type of thing they want to let you automate. Just slap a blueprint down, forget about it, and that platform is done. Not you have to micromanage a set of blueprints just to build one platform. Before they could get enough tiles and cargo bays built, other items managed to fill the hub completely. The workaround required sending some items back down and making sure cargo bays would be able to get in this time. What they've basically done is they've then right-clicked to get rid of items in that inventory, and kind of hoped that it would send up or eventually got to a point where it sent the cargo things. Of course, we had to fix it, so rseeding changed the code to not put unbuildable stuff into construction requests. This fix was fine when rockets sent full stacks, but led to inefficient utilization of the new mixed payloads. Reintroducing this bug was not an option, so we had to find a different way to fix it. Okay, so what they're doing there is basically saying, well, if you can't actually build this thing, if it's off on some far edge of the platform, don't send it. If that's some thruster on the back end of your platform, don't send it yet. Only send it when it can actually be built. The thread had suggested to prioritise space platform foundations, which became doable since item requests were sorted for batching logic anyway. Therefore, I added a request priority API to item prototypes and enabled it for platform foundations and cargo bays. Item prototypes just means it's class-based programming or object-based programming, object-oriented programming, where you have a prototype and then you derive things from that prototype and they carry forward functions and stuff. But that's all in the weeds, really. But basically, that's putting a thing into the logic of the systems into the objects that in the code that allows you to set them as priority. I would assume it's a numbered priority, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Do the lowest number first type of thing. Cargo bays are prioritised to speed up the building of large platforms by adding more input hatches and increasing inventory size. But it means they can still deadlock the platform in an extremely rare case. We thought this was an acceptable trade-off. This change adds all ghosts to construction requests again, even if the platform has enough supply, and also includes item requests of unbuilt entities. So a picture doesn't have a caption, but it's clearly what it's showing. It's hovering over the level 3 efficiency module, and it's got this little message here saying waiting on a higher priority request, Space Platform Foundation. So that's the prioritization going on. It's saying send the platform pieces before this efficiency module 3, even though in the sorting algorithm it is still looking at all of these items. Yeah, and the inventory is slowly filling up with, it's still requesting 6. It's a big platform, isn't it? 6.8k of those, and it's already kind of half full. But they say it's always going to use them. It can always build more platform pieces until all of the platform is built. So that seems like the most sensible thing to me. Obviously, normally I'd be scanning these for little hints of little things that are changes and what have you. But I've read the patch notes. I know what's coming. And to be honest, this is always the most, I love doing the speculation and stuff like that. But the most interesting thing for me in the Friday Facts is always the explaining the logic, the why have we done it this way. It was always more interesting to me than the me, seeing a tiny pixel somewhere and waffling on for 2 hours. But then I don't watch the videos, so I'm sure for other people it was the other way around. During my rework, I also found time to fix related long-standing bugs like the one with custom minimum payload. I don't actually know what that bug is, I'm not going to bother looking it up. Using custom minimum payload shouldn't be as necessary anymore, but now it works more as you would expect. I use this quite a lot, is that maybe I had a request for 5 level 3 quality solar panels, and so I would just ramp down, and it would sit there, and maybe it only had 10 or something in the actual inventory down on the planet, so it would sit there not able to do that, not able to fulfill that, and so you just ramp down the minimum payload. So and basically you could set that to 3, and it would just send the 3 basically. So that was kind of the workaround for doing some of these other bits and pieces, but more if you only need a couple of items and they're very, very specific, then it will send a rocket. And I say, for me personally, I know for a lot of people, that's then a waste of a rocket, but I never really cared. Rockets are really easy to make in Space Age. The rocket will request as many items as possible, capped at the requested amount or the amount in your logistics network, whichever is lower. It will try to launch as soon as the minimum payload is satisfied and no robots are on the way to bring more items. I even fixed modded cases like auto-launching items to orbit if a mod enables it in Space Age, which brings me to our next topic. Expanding modding support for rockets. Since I was rewriting rocket delivery logic anyway, I wanted to consider modding interface requests on this subject. Quite a few modders were displeased that the rocket lift weight was a global utility constant, but their request was marked as won't implement because it required a significant rework of the system. This was the perfect time to revisit it. It surprised me how much moddable lift weight complicated the implementation, and I believe our seeding was right about rejecting it. I'm not really sure if difficulty increased with mixed rockets or not, but it adds another payload optimization parameter to automatic rocket deliveries, so it makes sense that things aren't easy. Nevertheless, I was determined to implement it. So it's basically saying, if your limit's always 1,000, then you can just work with that. But if it's a number that can change, especially if it itself is a variable that can be changed. So effectively, if you've done a research that increases, if a mod adds in a research that increases the maximum lift weight, then that's going to be a dynamic number, and so the maths could get quite complicated. Finding the optimal packing gets exponentially harder because now you not only have to pack items optimally into a rocket, but also pick the right size to over-deliver as few items as possible. I started working towards the optimal solution, hoping the code would stay simple enough, but as soon as I solved one problem, I found another edge case. I was worried about performance impact of more complex approaches, so in the end I scrapped most of it and chose the simplest way. The logic, I see, it's actually talking about differently sized rockets. Okay, so the logic now picks the smallest available rocket which can fit all requested items, whereas a better approach could involve splitting the load across multiple smaller rockets. It is a reasonable compromise, and we can tweak it later if someone comes up with something smarter. Oh, I see. Okay, so there must be mods where you have different capacity rockets. Yeah, so basically it would have to work out which rocket to pick, because are you filling a 1-ton rocket? Are you filling a 500 kilogram rocket? Are you filling a 10-ton rocket? As for the rocket capacity mentioned in the item tooltip, which was another blocker for this feature, I decided to keep it referring to the default capacity in utility constants. Changing it to item weight and letting players calculate rocket capacity in their heads might have been better for mods with many custom rocket silos, but not so much for space age. This way, space age is unaffected, and mods can treat their custom lift weights as multipliers of this default value. Okay, and then we've got presumably an example of this, a tooltip for a modded rocket silo with increased lift weight. So this rocket has got a 3-ton lift weight, which is a 200% weight increase, but it requires more rocket parts basically, so it's a bigger rocket. Okay, next bit gets a little bit kind of in the weeds really. So it says, as a last thing, to make the automated delivery logic work nicely with mixed rockets, I changed the rocket silo inventory size to be dynamic. Inventory slots will automatically grow and shrink when new items are added or removed, either physically or through remote interaction. The old mode didn't go away. Modders can choose between a weight-restricted slot unlimited inventory and a weight unrestricted slot limited inventory. This selection is tied to launch to space platforms, which is the prototype parameter, because automatic rocket delivery can only work with dynamic sized inventories. Right, so what that's saying, and this is a change, it's sort of telling you it in a sort of backhand way. Basically, it used to be a fixed number of slots in the rocket. So one of the blockers on this, actually, was if you requested all of those items, and maybe they did weigh 1 ton, and it was all little bits and pieces and what have you, you only had one row of items to fit in the rocket. It only had that number of available items. And so even if you put in 1 of these, 2 of these, 5 of these, and it was less than the weight, it could still run out of space in order to put the items in. And what it does now is it dynamically resizes this inventory, but there are 2 modes of operation. One where it has the capacity, and it sounds like that can be variable, that's the only limit in terms of that. It will put in as many items. You could put 1 item of everything in the game. If your rocket had the weight capacity to do it, you could just put every single item in the game, fluids notwithstanding, excluding barrels. Or you can do it the other way round, and it has a set number of slots, but then there's no weight limit. So I can imagine a mod where it's got 2 slots in the rocket. You can put as much in weight wise as you want. Obviously you're limited by the if it sets a stack size basically, so that would be your actual limit. But that'll be changeable, so you could set that to be whatever you want type of thing, and it will then fill it in those 2 slots only. But if that total weight, say you're only sending inserters up, that's a tiny weight. If you're sending up, foundries or something, then that's a huge weight. So you've got 2 options of size limited or weight limited, and this automated system only works with weight limited. Yeah, so the inventory has to be dynamic, which makes sense, because why put in yet another problem for it? It's just dynamic, and it's based on weight. Space platform improvements by Clonan. Space platforms are the logistic backbone of the space age gameplay, and while they work okay, there are a few improvements we've made during 2.1 development. Import from any. Orbital requests can set a specific planet to import the items from. This is necessary for the platforms to actually move items between planets, e.g. pick up tungsten from Volcanus, drop it on Nalvis. If there was no filter on the pickup planet, then the game would have no way to know where dropping the items makes sense. But it turns out there are some cases where we want to import items from basically all locations, or at the very least, prevent dropping items at any planet. The main example is items that the platforms themselves need, like fuel cells, repair packs, etc. They're obviously different. If a platform is just going back and forth between two planets, then this is sort of a non-issue because you're just setting the requests at either end. So if it's got a pick up on one end and a drop off on the other, then that's fine. But later game in particular, you can have platforms just orbiting round, picking things up, dropping them off, picking things up, dropping them off. But you may not want a particular platform to drop a particular thing off at a particular planet. So you want to be able to filter it, or the opposite, you want it to drop off at every planet, until it's run out, sort of thing. An example of that is in my playthrough of my first playthrough. It was dropping. Now I didn't think, and you can just lob spent fuel cells overboard, sort of thing. But I didn't think, and I was putting them back in the hub, and it was dropping them on completely random planets. There were just junk basically everywhere, and there were a few other things as well. But the point being that repair packs, you probably want, if it needs repair packs, pick them up anyway. You don't want to do every single planet having a pick up repair packs request for the platform, sort of thing. So that's the type of stuff. It's just a smoothing out to enable you a bit more flexibility to be able to import things from one place and export them to another, or not, or what have you. It is somewhat possible to achieve it with multiple logistic sections, each importing from different locations. So having all sorts of logistics sections for this is what you do at Nauvis, this is what you do at Gleba, this is what you do at Volcanus. But that is just tedious. Instead, we just implemented the common suggestion of leaving the import from blank, which now means import from all locations. So if you don't put anything there, it will import it from anywhere, basically. So that's the change. It had to have a value before, now it doesn't. And that's what this picture is showing. We've got this platform here, and the bit that they're hovering over to show you is this filter will only be active on the specified planet. Empty means the filter will be active on all planets. So you have the option of doing everything or setting it sort of per planet. Obviously, if you can't do a list, so if you wanted it to import these from 2 of the planets, for example, and export them on 2 others, you would have to set those up specifically. But then if you're doing something more complicated, I think that's probably a reasonable thing. No leaving with trash. A related problem is that you have a set filter to trash on a specific planet, e.g. dump depleted uranium fuel cells at Nauvis, and so that was the example of what I was doing. It was possible the platform would leave with the items still in the trash slots. This causes a little bit of unwanted problem in some situations, essentially randomly deciding where the items would end up. And as I say, that was the problem I was specifically having, that it was just dumping spent fuel cells at any old planet sort of thing. So we amended the platform logic so that it will wait to clear its trash slots before leaving the current location, if there is a surface to trash to. But yes, this picture is then just basically showing waiting for item drop cooldown, which is the blue point there. So it's done all of its stuff. So it could go, but it will wait because it's waiting to drop these off. One of the things you have to remember, so when people talk about throughput, the actual pods are part of your throughput on the platform. These are waiting because there's no pod available, no cargo pod available to drop them. So having more of your, your cargo bays gives you more and more slots for stuff to drop down and pick up, as it were. That's what that's waiting on. It's basically waiting for orbital drop pods. It looks like this platform is literally the one thing. It's not got a single extra thing, so it's only got like is it 3? The standard drop pods. So they're clearly waiting to be done. So it's now on a cooldown. This also applies to any items manually trashed, of course. So your expedition ships don't leave while you're waiting for your construction robots and such. You can also notice in the screenshot the new diode next to the orbital drop slots panel. Hovering this will show the status of the drop logic, such as waiting for item drop cooldown or all surface stations are busy. And that's, sorry, the little blue button is the diode. So it's just that. Hover over that and you can see what's going on. And you can see why you think your platform should be leaving and it isn't. Platform to platform transfers. So here it is. One of my wishes in my wishlist video has been fulfilled. You might notice something a little bit suspicious in the last screenshot. Why is the platform importing ice, carbon, sulfur? Isn't that super inefficient and illegal? So here, it's going the sulfur, carbon and ice. Not least of all because, carbon and ice you get from asteroids, so why would you be importing that? And you get sulfur as well, sort of later on. And yes, you would be absolutely right if we were playing 2.0. However, with 2.1 we are adding the ability to let platforms send and receive items from other platforms. Platform to platform transfer. In my video I came up with like a super complicated, because I assumed they hadn't included it because it was like a balancing thing, or it made the game too easy, or something like that. But no, just stuck it in. So this picture just shows it basically. So it says deliveries will be requested from space platforms in orbit over the planet. So basically you have this toggle. So where it's got that import from that they showed here, it has this radio button system where you can do it from the planet, from platforms, or both basically. So yeah, it can pull things across from other platforms. Effectively you can have it opens up so many options and possibilities that the mind boggles, but at the very least it means a platform can now effectively act as a hub, like a proper hub, and you can have your platforms dropping stuff off at the hub, and then the hub drops them down onto the planet and pulls them up to the planet. So this is how I'd envisaged. It's effectively, I guess it's a bit like how SpaceX works. In the orbital requests, you can specify from which place the filter will request from. From the planet, deliveries will be requested from rocket silos on the planet. From platforms, deliveries will be requested from space platforms in orbit over the planet. Or deliveries will be requested from both the planet and the space platforms. To prevent unexpected item transfers and also help with the feature discoverability, platforms have a checkbox to specify if they provide to other platforms or not. So yeah, this is the other part of it. You could end up with a situation where I guess you can get loops. In fact, that logistics things where you have a requester chest and it's like putting items into a provider chest. And so items, get requested in, they get put into a provider, then the bots come and switch them back to the requester, and then back into the provider via inserter, and yeah, so you can get loops like that in theory with the platforms where they turn up and they go, I want these items, and it pulls from one platform, and then that platform, says, I want these items, it pulls from another platform, and so you get all sorts of horrible potential chains. Now you may want that may be what you're after, but or some variation of it, but basically you have this checkbox here, provide materials to other platforms. So a platform can now either basically be I will provide my stuff to other platforms or not. This of course opens up a whole new can of possibilities, such as buffer platforms in orbit for quicker transport turnaround. All you Glebber fans should be happy, or Glebber non-fans I should say. Quicker bootstrapping of large platforms by seeding some ice, carbon, iron ore, so they don't have to sit there filling up with stuff. You've got that ready to go. It pulls it across from a platform that's just sat there as like a fuel station. Orbital assembling of space materials, such as space platform foundations, to save on surface rockets. So you could always do this. There's nothing stopping you. You could have a platform building platform pieces. And the point with this now is that can maybe just sit in orbit making those pieces. Because one of the things that is interesting about this is that we're obviously all at the moment chucking stuff overboard. Well, you could have it stored, and then when that platform comes back and it's got excess ice, it then passes that to some platform that does ice things basically. And if that has too much, it chucks it overboard. So you can effectively hoover up loads of materials if you wanted. You don't have to do this, but it's one thing that occurred to me, is that the excess stuff could just go to a platform, and if you've got loads and loads of iron, why not turn it into steel and turn that into platform pieces? Hub set requests. No Factorio feature is complete without the true automation with the circuit network. One reason we didn't add the circuit request before is that we did not have a way to specify which planet they would import from, and it seemed like an awkward system to implement. But now we have the import from any, so we can keep the design clean and intuitive by saying circuit requests import from all locations, and they also request from all sources, from the planet and platforms. It is also possible to use set requests at the same time as read contents, due to a little bit of magic self-subtraction of the circuit network signals. We've got another big one coming up. So this is another thing I had in my version 2.1 wish list, basically, that I couldn't see why it wasn't there in the beginning. And I get it now when they explained about this. The basic point was that you would have had to have, if the circuit network was saying import these items, the way it was set up before, it would have to say import these items from Volcanus, import these items from Gleber. Because that was how they set the platforms up. You could only request from a planet. And it would have been quite complex and difficult to do if you had a circuit request that was saying import from. It would then need to say which planet, and that's not part of how they've built the system. It doesn't support that type of subtlety. Well, now that you can say import from anywhere, including other platforms, but now that you've said import from anywhere, it doesn't matter that you're not telling it which planet. It can just be an import from anywhere. And so the point is that these circuit request set ones now do it from anywhere. So you can't do a circuit request that is from a particular planet. Okay, fine, it's a limitation, but it means you can now do proper automated circuit-based requests. And more, I'm trying to avoid not saying it because it is another big separate surprise, but obviously what you would expect next is that circuit logic being calculated somewhere else. Okay, so it's the next point, so I'm not secretly revealing anything, but basically you can get circuit networks now to properly set conditions for item requests on platforms. Brilliant. Super duper. So this picture shows that in action. So you've got a hub here, it's connected, you've got a constant combinator there feeding in a signal, okay? And then this bit here, controlled by circuit network, this is whatever's being fed in via this constant combinator. So this is saying, give me 20 recyclers, 20 EMPs, 1,000 electromagnetic science packs, and 20 Tesla towers. And the hover over is just because you've got the set requests, which is basically the circuit connection can now set requests for the platform, and it just knows to do that from anywhere. So this platform is going to request stuff from anywhere that's got these items. So that may not be something you want, but if it's just going backwards and forwards between Fulgora and Nauvis, for example, who cares? And the caption just says, sets the logic requests of the chest based on the signals from the circuit network, in this case the chest actually being a platform hub. Radar universe mode. And this is, it's a bit of a weird naming, I'll be totally honest, but this is one of the other things I was requesting in the 2.1 video. To make all the pieces come together, we need a way to transmit signals between platforms and planets, and it is only natural to have this feature as an extension of the radar circuit connection. I'll come back to the picture in just a second, I'll just read the next bit. You can specify a channel, signal ID, and all radars with the same universe channel will send and receive from each other. On a platform, you can filter the channels by current location to get missing planet materials or available cargo, and implement whatever logic you might like to control and command your fleet. All these features combine to make the space logistics in 2.1 much more capable. Oh, and there is one more thing. So we'll get to that in a second, obviously. It is a very nice thing. But basically, you now have two modes of operation for your radars. Okay, in my 2.1 video, I was talking about other buildings and all that sort of stuff. They've cut out all, cut away any of that nonsense, basically. And you can now put them in surface mode, which is that the radar will send these circuit signals. This was, this is another thing. It's like they added the ability to transmit circuit signals via radars, in 2.0, and then made them unable to communicate with platforms. And I was just like, why? Why have you not done that? But yes, so basically you can now set a radar to operate in this surface mode or universe mode, and then you give it a channel. It's not a per planet thing, it's not a per platform thing. Every radar that's on these networks, this is just broadcast out into the ether, and everything can pick it up. So you just send it out on the channel Fulgora, and every other radar that you tune to have Fulgora as its channel will be able to receive that signal. And that means it will be able to inject information into that, as well as use that information. So if you want to send, say you set this is my standard recipe for Fulgora, okay, and that is just set on my combinator, okay, and then you have this channel being how many planets want one of those, that say Volcanus wants it and Gleber wants it, so that's 2. So they both put out the signal saying please send me the Fulgora items, and so when it gets to Fulgora it will load up 2 lots of what you've requested. You'd have to do all the circuit stuff yourself obviously, but it will request 2 of those, and then I think you can set that automatically. Maybe you can't, maybe that's missing and I'm just jumping the gun there, but you should be able to do, it might be a bit of a complicated combinator setup then, but you should be able to get those. But another example might be requesting you might have a Gleber request, a Volcanus request, a Nauvis request, and so you can just send those out and you can manipulate them. So if on your planet you've already got 20 Tesla towers, you can knock that, that would just not be featuring in the signal. So it's requesting 20, 1,000. So you can do all of that properly dynamic stuff that I was always wanting to do with space platforms, instead of, when I did in my first playthrough, as going back to that one, I just did big ships that just collected everything and dropped off everything. And that's fine, it works, it's okay, but it's inelegant, and if you are concerned about rockets for some reason, it's a lot of rockets firing back and forth in order to send stuff up that then just sits on a platform never being used. That is the combination of being able to do platforms with combinators and the whole circuit network, and being able to send those signals round. Yeah, they can communicate. It's just a signal going out. You can use it wherever and however you want. Okay. New rocket silo animation. As a part of 2.1, we are making our last pass over the graphics, so prepare your eyes for this treat and many more to come. So I'll just read the little bit at the bottom as well. So it just says, graphics by Zloty, sounds by Ian. That's for the actual video that we will watch separately. It is now much more clear when the silo is crafting, and we added the little hatch in the top right for the robots to pick up and drop off items. So that's referring to that little hatch you're talking about, is that one there. And you notice how it's blue because it's effectively like a requester chest. But yes, this is the new thing. So look in this area. If you don't see what's going on, look in this area where I've got my cursor for what's going on. So we'll watch this video. It is a little bit long because it does craft an entire rocket, but yeah. They've also, you can see it darkening. They've done it at night, so that in the evening, so you can see the different things. So there we go. So I mean, there are other tweaks to it. I'm pretty sure this like vibratey thing here, quite what it's meant to be doing, I don't know. I think it's meant to be expelling gas or something like that. But yeah, so this is wobbling here. Let's do it in the day. You see that? So that is moving. I'm pretty sure it didn't do any of that animation before. But yeah, you've got like these piston things moving something up and down. And so I'm pretty sure it's pumping out some gas or something like that. But the big change is this down in the sort of bottom right corner here, where it's essentially building the rocket. I would guess they're more like the booster rockets, like the actual, these parts on the side. But essentially it's building those in a tube that's going down underground, as it were. And notice how it does it. It's very, very clever because they're offset. So as it's like it's screwing down into the hole as it's putting these pieces in. So each time it does one, it puts the piece on the arm. Oh, and you can actually even there's even a detail here. This thing is curving the actual pieces. So if you watch that, you can see it coming up. It grabs one. You see it comes up again. It grabs it, and then it comes up again. So it's actually curving it to like the perfect, curve sort of thing. And then it picks it up, obviously puts it on, and then this welder, basically welds it in place. But it's doing it. You see, it's a sort of a offset, so it's like almost like a zigzag pattern for it. And so as it moves round, it also moves down. So each piece like screws into the ground, and so it goes down, moves across, down, moves across, down. It's a very, very nice animation. And to say you got over whatever this vibrator here thing is. This comes in late. I think it's when it's in the dark. Presumably once it's launched the rocket. Oh, sorry, very. I don't know if you spot the. It does. Bot does actually come in. There you go. So the bot actually comes in, and it's got like the openy iris thing for a logistics chest. So you say, watch that bit there. Bot comes in and does the grabby thing that they do from logistics requests, basically. As always, mix a payload of your thoughts at the usual places. I can't do speculation, obviously, because I know what's coming. I've read the changelog and am playing through. I'm not at the stage of doing rockets yet. I'll be doing that very soon. I'm kind of at the stage where, because I'm having to do it around my work and what have you, and I did start from a brand new playthrough, etc., etc., so I could try and catch as many things in the new, from if there's stuff from the beginning right through to the end. I'm going to do my best to get there in this month that we've got before it launches to everyone. I think I can give my impressions, though, effectively of what's here, just my sort of opinions, and it's awesome. So for me personally, the mixed rockets thing, it's not the game changer, it's not the sort of amazing feature that I think a lot of other people will see it as, and I'm sort of happy for them. It's, I'm not against this. I think it is a good, and it is clever how they've done it and made it sort of simple but effective. But say for me, I was always happy with it. It just sends a rocket load of stuff, fine. But then I don't work at giant scales, and I think a lot of players do, and they're sending hundreds of rockets and what have you, and so having it do proper packing and individual items, or maybe the other way around, they're only just able to send one rocket, so they don't want it to send 50 furnaces when they only need 2. So I do get, for a lot of people that's going to be a big change. It was one of the things in the your requests for 2.1 video. Quite a lot of people said dynamic or manually or automatically mixed rocket loads and all that sort of stuff. I did always appreciate that the maths on it can get quite complicated, and I think the way they've done this is very elegant. It's a very nice solution that kind of achieves what it needs to achieve, especially since it has a default back to just fill a rocket. If it can't do a packing solution, it just goes, right, send 50 assembly machines or what have you. So I think that's really, really nice. These changes to importing, exporting, and in particular, and I've already ranted and raved at how brilliant I think it's going to be, that you can do requests using circuit networks, and you can send circuit network signals around the whole system. It's just way more flexible, way more. It opens up so many more possibilities of how to play. I'm sure someone will eventually work out this is the optimal thing to do. I never care about that stuff. If it lets me do wacky, wonderful, weird things that just work, and I don't even know how they work, and they work. That's the type of stuff I love from Factorio. Although it's difficult to go back to, spaghetti is the best base, in my opinion. Although it's difficult to go back to spaghetti once you kind of know some more efficient ways of doing things, or you've played the game a lot. But spaghetti bases are always the best bases, They're just more interesting. I mean, best in the I like them the best. Rather, they're not the most efficient. That's almost the point. But that's the game. That the spaghetti base is the game to me on many levels, and just the fact that this adds so many new, and you don't have to do any of it. It's all completely optional. You can still play it exactly the way you did before. It's just that it will build platforms a bit more sensibly, and it will fill rockets a bit more sensibly, and if you really want to, you can mess about with circuit networks. If you've never touched circuit networks, this isn't stopping you finishing the game. So yeah, I'm really, really big fan of these. Really pleased that all of this is in there, and yeah, I'm now assuming we will be getting Friday Facts every week. So if this turns out to be the last one, then that's fine. But yeah, I'm now kind of assuming they'll get Friday Facts every week. I'm still planning on streaming at the weekend, so if you wanted to chat about this Friday Facts, it may not work. So I'll be streaming at 4 o'clock on Sunday. As it happens this weekend, I can't stream Saturday, but I've been getting even more codes for games, and it always feels a bit rubbish not doing anything for them, as it were. So they send me a code, and I always give you my honest opinions on things. I'm not going to just, this is brilliant, even though it's not. And a code, some of the games, the games are, it's like a £5 game type of thing, which that may be beyond your means type of thing. But it compared to they're not. I'm not getting sent £80 AAA games. It's smallish, and generally building management, that type of stuff that's in my wheelhouse. So it always feels a bit rubbish not to do anything with them. Even if I just do a 2-hour let's try stream, I think that's probably where I'd end up with. But as I said before, why I changed it all is, they always did poorly on the main channel, but now I've obviously got the second channel, Triggles, VODs and Sods. If you want to join there, there'll be a link on my page, if not in the description of this video. And so Saturdays, I'm thinking I can do some other random games. I could always pick up, Satisfactory, for example, did its 1.2 release, so I could pick that up again and get really, really annoyed with it. And maybe do that on the Saturday if I've got time. I don't this weekend, so there's not going to be one of those. But it's also going to be tricky with editing the Friday Facts. But the point is that Sunday, 4 o'clock, British Summer Time, UK time, I'll be streaming for a couple of hours. We'll be playing the map I was playing before. We will not be playing, it won't be 2.1. So the restriction I've got is I can't talk about anything that's not in the Friday Facts. Okay, so if it's in the Friday Facts, if you want to know some little detail that's not covered here or something like that, I can possibly answer, but I would do my best not to. If that proves too problematic, I'm anticipating nobody's going to turn up at the stream. Nobody ever does. And thank you for those that do, that watch the streams. But, I get 5 viewers at most type of thing. So that's all. It should be okay. And you're all pretty respectful, the ones who do usually pop in. But if you're asking questions where I'm struggling not to answer them, or I'm struggling to answer but not give the detail, if it's too hard, then I'll just do random streams until we get to next month, and I'll be able to do a proper 2.1 because you all have access via the beta on Steam. So yes, so I can talk about all of this. If there's any detail that you don't understand, or you can actually see it here when this here and this here, it's the new stuff, and you can't quite see the top of it there. But you see, it's one of the things I would say. I can't speculate, but there's nothing stopping you looking at all these pictures and telling me what you think's in. I won't confirm or deny. You can do your own speculation. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's Friday Facts video and might consider coming back for another one. I've been Trismegistus. This has been Factorio Friday Facts. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Considering I'm not doing any speculation, I'm still managing to rabbit on quite a lot, aren't I? Anyway, yeah, I'll do.